The barbell bent over row is a fantastic exercise for the upper back and the biceps, and does a great job of building positional strength that you can transfer over to lifts like the deadlift if you're doing it right. And if you're doing it wrong, it does a good job of crippling you for a few days. And so we want a little bit more of A and a little less of B. So today we're going to talk about how to set it up properly and some of the common mistakes that I see when people do this exercise. Key things that we're looking for in the setup of this exercise. When you're setting this up, we want to have the feet pretty much shoulder width or maybe a little bit wider. We're going to turn the toes out about 10 to 20 degrees. And then as far as the width from the bar, you want to think about either straight down from the arm or about a finger or two wider. So from there, making sure to keep the shoulders down away from the ears. We're going to grab the bar, bend at the waist, push to stand up, and then drop down into our bottom position until our upper body is almost parallel with the ground. Not quite though. Then we're gonna drive the elbow behind us or toward the ceiling. We're gonna pause when the elbow is essentially in line with the body, and then reach long. So the key faults that I usually see with most people bent over rows that limit the amount of weight that they can move and also how much they light up their lower back are going to be what they do with their head. So when they're bent over, sometimes the urge is going to be to look forward at, let's say, a mirror or something of the sort, or look up at the ceiling as we're rowing. This makes it really difficult to pull the shoulders down, which makes it hard to not only use the back, but at the same time, not have this go into the lower back, because as soon as those shoulders come up, we get some rounding, which means that we're loaded through the lower back. So it's super important that we allow our head to come back in line with the body. So what I like to think of is set this up from the top, pull the shoulders down, and then put hand on chin, try to get away from your chin, and that's gonna give you your head position. So if you bend over and you're looking slightly forward, or maybe a little bit in front of you, then that should allow you a good position that you can row from while keeping those shoulders down. So that's part number one. Number two is going to be how wide your stance is, or how narrow it is going to determine also how much the lower back has to work in order to hold together that position. So if the stance is really narrow and you try to bend over, even without weight, you're going to find that you're kind of unstable, right? Or you just feel limited. So if we go a little wider, this gives us some breathing room. We still want to stay about in line with the hips or a little bit closer. And then from here, we're going to turn the toes out slightly, which is going to feel even more stable. And we're going to make sure that the knees don't collapse inwards. They're actually going to drive outwards, and you're going to push into the ground, which is going to make you feel really connected to the ground, which is a super stable position. You're probably going to be working hard through your thighs and through the glutes, but you shouldn't feel much, if any, pressure through the lower back. That tells you that's a good position to row from. So super important that you take a stance that's wide enough and enough toe out that you feel stable and you can push into the ground in that position. Another thing to look out for is going to be what you're doing at the finish of the row. So we want to make sure that the elbow finishes in line with the body, not further. Whether you're doing this supinated or pronated, it's the same thing. We always want to finish elbow essentially in line with the body, if not just a little bit further, because you get some retraction of the shoulder blades, though you're not actually thinking about squeezing your shoulder blades together. The reason why is because I often find that when somebody thinks about squeezing the shoulder blades together, they end up moving from the shoulder more than they do through the scapula, which is what we're looking for. So I like to think about just driving till the elbows are in line with the body, and then making sure that we pull the shoulders down as hard as we can to get that last little bit of movement. So super important as you row that we find a spot that we can stop and pause and hold, and that's going to tell you if you start feeling the lats not the lower back, whether that's a good position or not. So the thing that's going to get tired the quickest in any sort of row is usually going to be the bicep. So the way that we maximize rowing movements is usually going to be to extend the time that you're doing the hard part of the lift for the back, which is why we add a pause typically, if we can, in the hardest part of the movement. Now, doesn't mean you're always going to do that. As it gets heavier and heavier and you get better at this exercise and you can instinctively recruit the things that we're looking for better, you might not do that. But in the beginning, if you're trying to feel this out and you don't get any sort of back work from this exercise, then make sure that you slow down this part of the movement, whether that be overhand or underhand, it's the same deal. It's like we've got to slow down where the elbow's in line with the body and the next few degrees after and before that. All right, cool. Hope that helps.